All right, let's just jump right in. We're going to talk about what might be one of the most important days in the history of AI. A single day that really just blew the doors open on this massive split, a fundamental divide in where this technology is actually going.
So let's set the scene. The day is October 5th, 2025. And look, this was way more than just another round of flashy product announcements. This was a true inflection point. It's the day where two totally clashing visions for the future of AI just slammed into each other, right out in the open. And suddenly, everyone had to pay attention.
And really, this whole collision, it all boils down to one single massive question. The kind of question that's going to define the next decade, not just for tech, but for everyone. Is AI going to be this incredibly powerful tool that's locked down and controlled by just a handful of companies? Or is it going to become a power for the many, something decentralized and open for everyone to use? Okay, to really get a grip on this, we've got to start by looking at one side of the coin, the force of centralization. You can think of it as the frontier model's arms race, a super high-stakes sprint to the summit, a race for total dominance at the very, very top of the AI world.
Now, this is the story you've probably seen in all the headlines, right? You've got this tiny group of elite, incredibly well-funded labs, and they're in a flat-out sprint to build the biggest, the smartest, the most powerful AI models humanity has ever seen. It's literally a technological space race for our generation.
And here's where it gets really interesting, because this race isn't just one straight line. It's fractured. It's not just about who's the smartest anymore. You've got OpenAI with GPT 4.5 Turbo going after what they call intuitive intelligence, basically a model with a super high EQ that just feels more human to talk to. Then you've got Anthropic with Claude Sonnet 4.5, and they are all in on being the rock-solid, reliable workhorse for big business, hitting, state-of-the-art, SOTA, performance on stuff like coding. And then there's Meta, playing a totally different game with Llama 4. They're trying to win by just opening the floodgates, making their massive skill model open source for everyone. So you see, three giants, three completely different strategies. And believe me, the pressure cooker these guys are in is just insane. I mean, you have people like John Chambers, the former CEO of Cisco, saying that 50% of Fortune 500 companies are just going to poof, disappear, simply because their leadership can't adapt fast enough. When you hear that, you really start to get that innovate or die feeling that's just pouring gasoline on this fire.
Yeah, and this is not a cheap race to run. Not at all. To put a number on it, just OpenAI was reportedly valued at $500 billion. Think about that. That's the kind of financial firepower we're talking about. And it's all built on this one core belief. The winner here doesn't just win a new market, they win the future economy. But, and this is a huge but, there's a twist. The ultimate roadblock here isn't money. It's not even about finding brilliant people. It's physics. It all comes down to one word: compute. We're hearing reports that even a giant like OpenAI is struggling to get its hands on enough processing power just to keep their current products running smoothly, let alone launch something new. And that one single constraint, it's shaping every single move every company is making.
Okay, so that's one side. Now let's flip over and look at the other huge force that burst onto the scene on October 5th, because it's basically a direct reaction to that whole centralized, super expensive race to the top. This is the rise of the open ecosystem. You could almost call it a grassroots revolution. So, while all the giants were up there battling it out for the crown with their huge, monolithic models, something else was happening down on the ground. A really powerful counter-movement was building steam. And this is the other story. The story of decentralization, of specialization, and, of democratization. And a huge piece of this puzzle is something called Microsoft's Agent Framework. Now, this is a classic textbook platform play. What they did was release this free open source operating system for AI agents. They're trying to set the standard for the next layer of software. Basically, they want to be the new Windows or the new MS-DOS for the age of AI. And in doing that, they create this whole ecosystem that, surprise, surprise, just happens to run best on their cloud services. What a framework like this does is open up a completely different way of thinking. So instead of using one gigantic, super expensive model to do absolutely everything, the idea is you can now use a whole bunch of smaller, super efficient models that just do one thing, but they do it perfectly. The cost difference between these two approaches, it's not just big, it's dramatic.
It completely flips the script on the economics of using AI at a massive scale.
A perfect example of this in action is Salesforce's Coda 1.7b model. It's tiny, relatively speaking, it's open source, and it was built to do just one job: generate programming code. And because its architecture is so specialized for that one task, it gives you incredible performance at a tiny fraction of the cost. This is what people are calling the unbundling of AI. We're moving away from wanting one giant Swiss Army knife to having a whole toolkit full of specialized precision instruments.
All right, so whenever you have this much power, this much money, and these two huge ideas clashing, well, something's bound to happen. The referees inevitably show up to the game. And that's exactly what happened. On October 5th, regulations suddenly got very real. I mean, think about it. The tech was getting insanely powerful, and the market was getting super concentrated in just a few hands. So governments around the world basically looked at each other and said, okay, we can't just sit on the sidelines anymore. It was time to actually write the rule book for this new world. And maybe the biggest move of all came out of California with a law called Senate Bill 53. This thing is a landmark piece of legislation. It makes companies open up about their safety protocols, it mandates that they have to report any critical incidents, it gives real protection to whistleblowers inside these labs, but the craziest part, the most radical idea, is something called CalCompute. It's a state-funded public cloud. The whole point is to give smaller startups and university researchers access to the kind of insane computing power they need to even have a chance to compete. And since California is, let's face it, the heart of the AI industry, this law is pretty much guaranteed to become the unofficial standard for the whole country. What's really fascinating, though, is seeing how different governments are tackling the same problem from totally different angles. You've got California, which is laser-focused on corporate accountability. Their whole thing is, you built it, you have to prove it's safe. The EU, on the other hand, is looking at this through a lens of geopolitical sovereignty. For them, it's a national security issue. They're pouring money into building their own AI systems because they're terrified of becoming dependent on US or Chinese tech. So we have these two massive forces, right? Pushing and pulling in completely opposite directions. Centralization versus decentralization. The big labs versus the open ecosystem. So where does that leave all of us? Well, that brings us to the synthesis of it all, what we can call AI's hybrid future.
Because here's the key thing to understand. This isn't a choice. It's not an either-or. The companies that are going to win in this new era, they're not going to be the ones that pick a side. No way. The winners will be the ones who figure out how to master both sides of this equation at the same time.
And this is leading to a new concept that people are calling the hybrid stack. The strategy itself is pretty simple, but it is incredibly powerful. Here's how it works. You use those big, expensive frontier models for the really tough creative problems, right? The complex stuff. But then, for the millions and millions of routine, high-volume jobs, you tap into a whole portfolio of those cheaper, specialized models. But the real magic, the secret sauce, the thing that gives you the actual competitive advantage is mastering that third piece, the orchestration layer. That's the system that cleverly manages all these different AIs, making sure the right tool is used for the right job, efficiently and securely.
And that is the single biggest takeaway from that crazy day. For pretty much every business out there, the game has changed. The ultimate competitive advantage isn't about trying to build the next GPT anymore. It's about becoming a master conductor, learning how to skillfully orchestrate this whole symphony of different AI tools to create something valuable. The center of power is literally shifting from creation to orchestration.
So that leaves us with one last really big question to chew on. As this new AI era starts to take shape all around us, where's the real, lasting power actually going to end up? Is it going to be with a handful of labs that can build these almost godlike frontier models? Or will it be with the huge community of people creating all the open source tools and specialized AIs? Or will the ultimate power belong to the ones who get to write the rules that govern the entire game? That's the fundamental battle that was laid bare on October 5th, and it's a battle that's still raging right now.